now. We got under 40 days to go, and what do each of these candidates have to do to either close the deal or to get back in the game? And has the Republican establishment kind of given signs already that they don't think it's going to go well at the top of the ticket? And next, we sit down with acclaimed columnist E.J. Dionne to talk over his new book on America's internal fight with itself here. He's an optimist who says we can turn things around. I'll admit, I'm a little skeptical. And stop and frisk, a major blow to the NYPD's controversial policy. It's now on the arresting officer to prove that stop and frisk arrests are in fact warranted. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the RFL. I'm Richard French. We got all that, plus, hallelujah, got the refs back as well. We'll talk about the NFL returning to sanity as well this hour. We got a busy show here this Thursday evening, September 27th. Well, things are really shifting into even higher gear in the presidential campaign. I told you already we're in the 11th hour as we're closing in. A lot of time, certainly things can change here, but we're getting ready for the debates. In fact, the first one is set for this coming Wednesday night. We'll bring it to you live as we reach another milestone in the campaign. As of tonight, 40 days left till this America actually hits the polls. Forget the early voting, you get my drift. And as the sand slips through the hourglass, we are seeing some new trends as Republicans are pinning their hopes here on these three presidential debates and that VP debate, and also on the Senate, while Democrats are starting to get ramped up here for what they hope could be not just a win by the president, but some coattails that could help the numbers pick up in both the Senate and the House. Let's bring in Andrew Whitman here on the latest as we do the ground game here on the numbers.
And Rich, as we hit 40 days until the election, all of the numbers in the presidential race begin to take on extra importance. And tonight, all those numbers appear to be positives for the president's re-election chances. Latest poll average, the poll of polls, if you will, continues to put the president out in front. It is now a 4-point national lead and a 74-vote lead in the Electoral College, with the president at 265 electoral votes here, just shy of the 5, or just 5 shy, I should say, of the 270 he needs for victory. Add to that 2 other independent analyses of the race, shifting dramatically in the president's favor. Nate Silver, the forecaster with the computer simulations at the Times, now gives the president an 82% chance of being reelected, with his estimates giving the president better than 51% of the popular vote and 316 electoral votes. And then there's Larry Sabato, who does the analysis for the University of Virginia's Center for Politics. Sabato has just changed his forecast, moving 5 toss-up states, including Ohio, Virginia, and Iowa, into the Obama column. His forecast now puts the president at 290 electoral votes, enough to win a second term, with 206 to Romney and just 42 toss-up votes left from 3 states, Florida, New Hampshire, and Colorado. Does the president have re-election all but wrapped up? Some are accusing him of acting like it. He's released this ad, which many are saying feels like an ad for the start of November, not the end of September.
It's time for a new economic patriotism, rooted in the belief that growing our economy begins with a strong, thriving middle class. Read my plan, compare it to Governor Romney's, and decide for yourself. Thanks for listening.
And then there's this Obama ad, which makes an impact using only Mitt Romney's own voice and the faces of regular Americans.
There are 47% of the people who will vote for the president no matter what, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they are victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. And they will vote for this president no matter what. And so my job is not to worry about those people. I'll never convince them. They should take personal responsibility and care for their lives.
Another take on those same words as Romney counters with an ad clearly targeting that 47% of voters he was caught on tape calling moochers.
President Obama and I both care about poor and middle-class families. The difference is my policies will make things better for them. We shouldn't measure compassion by how many people are on welfare. We should measure compassion by how many people are able to get off welfare and get a good-paying job.
One more development to report on tonight, the movement of money in these races. The Times out with an article today that describes the upswing in the level of super PAC donations coming from democratically leaning multimillionaires, particularly from trial lawyers. This reverses a trend that had fewer Dems donating big checks to these outside groups. While on the opposite end of the spectrum, the opposite trend may be happening. The super PAC Crossroads GPS, led by former Bush advisor Karl Rove, announcing a big ad buy in a number of House and Senate races. Why? because the group is spending money it will not be using to support Mitt Romney in the presidential race. The thought that Republicans are now trying to salvage what they can from the election as the sense of an impending Romney defeat on November 6th begins to grow. Rich?
Okay, guys, let me bring in our panel now. We're going to get into this. Marc Fernich, prolific writer here, not just writer, prolific writer, criminal defense attorney who's argued before the High Court and professor at Brooklyn Law. Dominic Carter, esteemed political journalist and author. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Marc Rosen here, a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, as well as assistant professor at West Point and former congressional candidate. Speaks for itself. And you, Andrew, yes, our senior political correspondent. All right. I got to say, wherever you stand politically, it is amazing to me, Dominic, that you count days like this as precious commodities at the end of a campaign. The Romney campaign, by the closest Republican supporters and advisors, they feel that they are wasting days and they can't chalk up to ever winning a news cycle, it's felt. For the last week and a half, even after the 47%, I thought that was a devastating ad the president's got going, running in swing states. They just can't get out of their own way. The latest example, this whole, Romney care versus Obamacare. One day, Romney says it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Look at all the people I helped in Massachusetts. The next day, he's going to repeal here Obamacare. And I know there's a distinction between state and federal, but it's going to be lost here on the general population. It just adds this narrative as to who is this guy and what does he stand for. It's like they can't get out of their own way.
Well, Richard, what's that saying the fat lady is singing? No. She's almost singing in this case. I mean, it's still close with the national race, but to your point, the Romney folks, they're tripping all over themselves. They can't win a news cycle. They can't get ahead of anything. They can't put Obama on the defensive. And it's almost like President Obama is the major leagues in baseball and Mitt Romney is the minors. That's how bad it is.
And Mark, for me, I feel that there has either been a disservice done to Mitt Romney by political malpractice by his campaign, or he's driving it, but it's like they got to respond to the latest news headline of the day. All they should have been talking about for the last month has been the economy and jobs. They've been diverted, some of it because they have to respond to the tape, but they've been diverted on every single thing. He's not going to win foreign policy. He's not going to win the fight here. What's he doing and wasting 2 days on that for? You're a loyal Republican here, a candidate one time yourself. From a 10,000-foot view, it's like they can't get out of their own way.
Well, I'll preface and say I do think that the current policies are tragic and bad for America, and the leadership is also equally bad. I think the alternative, Romney, is a better solution for our future and growth, but he's running an absolute bad campaign. And as an objective analyst, I just put it out there. The 47% played in all the bad ways you could possibly play it, in terms of the stereotype, in terms of how the opposition is casting him. And I think in his core and his heart, he's not there. But the language used, the premise, he needs to define the problem in his overarching vision. I've said this before on this channel. And he needs to get out there and show leadership and authenticity that he showed as a CEO in other venue, and get out of his way and fire the consultants. So absolutely.
And Andrew, that old axiom, you can't be all things to all people. It seems one day he's still trying to court, after that bruising primary process, the hard right to say, I'm really with you. I'm one of you guys, trust me, okay? He's changed all the social policies that he stood for as a Massachusetts governor, and now he's a different guy. He's still trying to appeal to them all at the same end, trying to tell middle America here, or the middle of the road politically, I'm with you too. I don't really mean the 47%. I really mean all of us here. I'm really a moderate from Massachusetts. You can't have it both ways. People want it simple. This is a bumper sticker time that we live in, and he's given so many narratives. You know, it's good for us every night because it's something to talk about, but that's bad for a campaign.
We've been talking about this from the beginning of the campaign. Mitt Romney has this baggage attached to him, like he will say whatever he thinks the room that he's in wants to hear, but it seems like he's run his entire campaign that way. The other downside with that 47% comment is that's actually a little bit of a peekaboo into what some of the underlying philosophy of today's Republican Party is. And that's one of those things where I think it's a mistake by telling the truth. I get the sense that was a genuine Mitt Romney on that tape, and that policy isn't playing particularly well, not just his style.
But you know what, Mark? The problem is two different people can disagree as to whether or not that was the Mitt Romney, and you can do that for 20 different things. Who is this guy? We're in October, for crying out loud, right? Almost, right? And we still don't know.
Well, I know one thing that he is. I know
In
that
trouble?
well, he may be in trouble, but I don't necessarily agree with what you said about Obama having the upper hand on foreign policy. I mean,
Every poll says so.
Well, regardless of what the poll says, the last month has been a disaster for the United States foreign policy-wise. It's been at its ebb, the lowest in this country since Jimmy Carter. We have embassies in flames. We have foreign diplomats dying. Now, I don't blame our president for that, but he has tried to court the Arab world since he's been elected, and that has been a dismal failure because the Arab world is impervious to whoever is in the Oval Office.
In this last month, the president's numbers have not fallen. Mitt Romney's numbers have not risen on foreign policy. So
they should.
But
why that hasn't happened, I'm not a political
What
strategist.
I'd like to, because we don't have a lot of time in politics, I want to get to debates in a second, I will only say that where we can philosophically disagree on this is that this perception that who's ever sitting in Pennsylvania Avenue is going to control the Arab street and that somehow we'll pick their world leaders as if there's a magic button that'll decide who will and won't sit in the chairs in Damascus or in Cairo or wherever else. I think the general public doesn't believe it works that way. I think they're right.
The president is the one who said that he would take a different tack toward the Muslim world and he would improve America's relations with the Muslim world, and he would do that by reaching out to them and extending a hand of friendship. That approach was tried. It was a dismal failure, and now it calls for a hard, different tack.
I want to say, though, he's still going to be remembered in the first sentence on foreign policy, and you'll
Understood.
disagree or not.
No, I
as
understood.
the guy who was there when Osama bin Laden was killed.
And
he
he
was the sitting
deserves
president.
kudos for that, for sure.
All right. Now, one thing I think we'll all agree on is if Mitt Romney's going to make some major headway here and turn this narrative around, he's got to go to the debates, Andrew. And as we said before, the first one's coming up this Wednesday night. It begs the question here, is there any precedent? Can he lean on anything to say, hey, other guys have been in a tough spot. They've turned it around by telling the American public head-to-head here with the other guy across the room, they're the better man.
I was looking for examples of that today. I didn't want to go back to 1960 with Kennedy and Nixon, so I found three relatively recent examples. First, 1980, contrary to popular belief, Carter and Reagan were actually trading leads in the polls, but going into the final debate, Gallup had Carter up by 3. Then came the debate.
These are the kind of elements of a national health insurance important to the American people. Governor Reagan, again, typically is against such a proposal.
Governor, there you go again.
That was the line that was remembered. Reagan, widely thought to have won that debate. He went on to win the White House by 10. Next up, 1992. Bill Clinton was up 3 going into this debate. He would go on to win by 6. The key here, not a line, but an action that made many feel like incumbent President George H.W. Bush was out of touch and didn't really care about the debate. Keep your eyes on Bush on the left of the screen as a voter asks a question.
We have a question right here.
Yes, how has the national debt personally affected each of your lives?
It was a little thing, but doing that gave many people the impression it was time for a new president, and that perhaps President Bush wasn't as invested as he should have been. Finally, flashback to 2000. George W. Bush was ahead in the polls. He would go on to win the electoral vote and the election, but lose the popular vote to Al Gore. But it was what Gore did on stage, sighing in one debate and then appearing ready to confront Bush in this clip that for many sealed his image as too soft to be president.
That's what the question in this campaign is about. It's not only what's your philosophy and what's your position on issues, but can you get things done? And I believe I can.
Now obviously that didn't work, but in the last 2 clips, it was the debates providing reinforcement of beliefs that people already held about the individuals.
Remember when Lazio, we love Rick Lazio. He's one of my favorite guys. He'll come here all the time. I always ask, who told you to walk up to her and put the papers in her face, she being Hillary Clinton?
Impact.
It doesn't work, though, right?
No. I think it plays better in their head than in real life.
Oh, did you guys hear, by the way, where George W. is going to be? Obviously, he wasn't in Tampa at the convention. Did you hear where he's going to be in the days before the election?
On a beach?
Very close. He'll be in the Cayman Islands. Along with Richard, I'm not making this up, I swear to God, along with Richard Branson, talking basically about how to create investments and basically put money overseas in foreign property. If you don't think the message was lost on him that he wasn't invited to the convention, that he's doing this days before the election, I think it speaks volumes here that some people are trying to get out ahead of this thing. They don't think it's going to turn out too well. But you can't make that up, Tom. All right, guys. You guys are now, I'm making you, the man to my right and to my left, Marc, I'll start with you. If you're going to give one piece of advice other than don't walk up to Barack Obama, what would you tell Mitt Romney in debate #1 to do? Don't sigh, don't look at your watch, but what should he do?
Be authentic.
What is that?
Speaking from the heart, truthful to the American public, saying, this is my vision for America, this is how we're going to do it, this is, at the end of the day, you're going to be a better America. We are going to be a better America with greater growth. What 4% growth versus 2% that rises all boats, and say it with authenticity and explain how and connect the dots for Americans, how his views on taxes, on spending, on regulations all feed into that vision. He hasn't done that well. He needs to do that and stop with the silly sound bites.
Marc?
Yeah, I think that he has to sketch out a vision that's different from the president's. Be compassionate, be authentic, and point up the differences between the two. I mean, these elections are referendums on the incumbent. You're going to have to make clear how you differ from Obama, what you think is wrong with what he did, and how you're going to do it better, and hammer on the two things that matter, the economy and foreign policy.
You know what, Dominic, I think it would serve Mitt Romney well if he admits or says at the debate, listen, I'm not the best campaigner. I've made maybe different sets of words here. There are things that this guy across the hall can do better than me, but this is what I can do better than him. I think he has to acknowledge in some way this hasn't gone according to script.
But he can't say that, Richard, because that becomes the news cycle. All you're going to get is, I'm not a good campaigner. With the advice that I would give Mr. Romney at this point, he's got to throw a Hail Mary. Be aggressive almost throughout the entire debate. And I honestly would bring up Reverend Wright. I really would.
I would do that too, because that has been swept under the rug.
Totally.
I would bring up Reverend Wright.
Reeks of desperation.
That's not what we're dealing with right now?
There's nothing called dignity.
No, it's not desperation. It's completely legitimate. And here's why it's legitimate. Here's why it's legitimate. Reverend Wright, he named a book after Reverend Wright, and he was an official member of the Obama campaign.
Last year's
No, it's not fighting last year's war. It's not just guilt by association. It's a man who had a profound influence on his political and social views. Completely fair game.
The Hail Mary is not desperation. It's telling it straight to the American public. Be big ideas.
But
Tell us how to solve these problems.
Nobody wants to hear what Mr. Romney has to say.
He hasn't done it yet.
Because all Romney has said has been attacking the president. He hasn't really laid out his own plans. I would tell Romney, ignore the president, pretend he's not even there. You just sell your plan and your vision to the American people. Lay off the president, because that's all you've been doing for 3 years. And
you can't do that.
He might as well not show up if that's what he's
I don't think he's been tough enough on the president.
Right, not at all.
Keep this dialogue going online. Go to our Facebook page or Twitter and sound off. Regarding these presidential debates, could they change your vote? Have you already made it up, or are you still waiting to see what happens this coming week and in the subsequent debates to shape that opinion? All right, when we come back, we're going to sit down with columnist E.J. Dionne and talk about his new book. And in it, he goes through the history of America, the political divides we've had, but he believes that there still is a consensus that can be had. We'll talk about if that's a pipe dream or a possibility. Stay with us.